The prodigal. My son returns.
Hi everyone, welcome to Priority Holder, and today we'll be playing Mono Blue Scam in the Timeless format. So our means of scamming creatures into play is Essence Flux, which just blinks it and returns to the battlefield. We don't really have spirits, so we don't care about the 1/1 counterpart. And a nice thing to scam into play is Quantum Riddler, which you can warp into play, draw a card, and then flicker it, draw another card, and also you have a huge threat into play. And you have card draw bonuses with this when this is on the battlefield. So another thing you can scam into play is Subtlety. You can sort of memory lapse like a creature or planeswalker and keep the 3/3 flyer around, as well as Tishana's Tidebinder, which can like stifle fetch lands or chrome moxes, and we're doubling down on that effect with some extra actual stifles. And we're really trying to just tempo them out and have a ton of stack interactions. So we have counterspells and mana drains and spell pierces, and we have multiple stifle effects in Stifle and Tidebinder. Snapcaster has multiple ways to buy things back and just sort of, keep blinking things if necessary. And we also have like a pretty strong mana denial element, so rocking 4 strip mines as well as multiple stifles means you could really mess with people's mana bases. So let's jump to some games. Alright, so this is a pretty good hand. Have a 1 mana spell, which we like. Stifle, we might be able to nab like a fetch or something like that. Okay, so it is an artifact land, and let's see what they do with it. Put out a Chromatic Star. So already on my radar is like eggs as a possibility. There's other artifact combo decks that use like Beseech the Mirror, so like there's other things it could be. Now Strip Mine is an interesting choice because we could possibly hamper like Mox Opals and stuff like that. I decide we need to like advance your game plan, and things can just spiral with artifact decks, so I just want to hold up the Stifle here. I'm glad I did. So they toss out a Chrome Mox, which is not one you usually see in artifact decks, but it's they must have some other kind of build there with enough non-artifact cards to enable it, and they must be like pretty explosive. Alright, so we successfully stopped their Chrome Mox. It's making me think now that they're like a paradoxical outcome deck, or possibly still like a Beseech one, but holding up mana drain at this point. And alright, so the opponent's passing with 3 different colors of artifact land mana. Going to just crack the fetch. So the Surveil is in there not for color purposes, but just for Surveil, because we're running fetches to help power up Brainstorm anyway. So alright, Quantum Riddler, as good as it is, like, I mean, maybe if we had an Essence Flux in hand, but honestly it doesn't seem very necessary in this matchup. Like, if we don't have like a way to scam it into play, like we can just kill them with like Snapcaster or Tishana's Tidebinder beatdowns, so I'd much rather like rack up like mana drains and spell pierces to battle what looks like a combo deck. Alright, so there's a Tishana's Tidebinder, which is pretty nice. We still have the option for Strip Mine. Gonna just play it here and decide to just go ahead and crack one of their lands. 4 mana is sort of a magic number for like these combo decks I mentioned, and we can still hold up mana drain. So going to pop that land, and the opponent appears to miss a land drop, so we're gonna hold on to Snapcaster. Just play it really patient. Like, we can kill them with basically anything, and we might really need to flash back a mana drain at some point. So it's awkward. Like, so I put some Thundertrap Trainers in there as like more creatures that are good to hit with like our blink spells and get us some value, so but the fact that you can't cast them at instant speed does really hurt. Alright, so the opponent's gonna Brainstorm here. And aside that's a pretty reasonable thing to mana drain. We know they're somewhat mana screwed right now thanks to our Strip Mine and our Stifle, and don't want them trying to get out of it with the Brainstorm. So anyway, they miss another land drop, so that turned out to be a reasonable choice right there. Going to crack the fetch, and once again, we are basically a monocolored deck, but the fetches are in there to power up Brainstorms. Okay, so here's our mana drain mana. And I'm just going to throw a Thundertrap Trainer out there without the Offspring, see what we can find. And this will still allow us to like hold up some decent interaction. Alright, Stifle's pretty nice. So the question is, do we play Tapped Hall the Storm Giants, or do we bolt in, like sink into Stupor? Because it would be nice to like have Tishana's Tidebinder up. Let's say they play some crazy artifact we need to Stifle, So going to pass back to them. Alright, they have a Surveil. So this is a somewhat juicy thing to hit with Tidebinder, but decide, just to hold off. Alright, so they're getting rid of a land. Because we could have denied them the Surveil and put the 3/2 into play, so like that is something you can definitely do. Going to Brainstorm on their end step. Just see what we have going on. Alright, 2 copies of Mana Drain. I'm just going to stick them both on top. Like, we're going to draw one of them on our draw step, and we want both of them anyway. And we have no reshuffle, so it really doesn't matter a whole lot. So we draw the Mana Drain. Going to definitely just slam our land. Now we're finally, like, pulling ahead on resources. The opponent just... We've managed to, like, really mess up their mana. And we just have, like, our base is pretty well covered right now from any sort of combo attempt. So there's another Brainstorm, which we could, you know, Mana Drain. Decide just to let it go this time. Alright, so there's a fetch. So they're cracking it into, you know, they knew we had a Stifle earlier, but, you know, they have to just execute their game plan at some point. So we're going to Tidebinder the fetch land. And this is why you play this style. Like, we have Stifles and Tishana's Tidebinders to, like, knock out Chrome Moxes, knock out fetch lands, and a whole bunch of other stuff. So they're going to play another Chrome Mox. And if they're a Paradoxical Outcome deck, they might not even be trying to tuck stuff under it, you know. So, but I'm going to Stifle it anyway, just to keep their mana production way under control. And now it's like, you know, with double Mana Drain plus Subtlety plus Snapcaster, it's pretty well in hand at this point. So we just got to clock them down to 0 as fast as we can. So let's see what the opponent does. Alright, so they're going to crack the star and decide to go ahead and Snapcaster Stifle the draw right here. Like, they're going to get, they have the mana no matter what. So it'd just be taking out the draw for it. This does 2 things. Like, we can still hold up Mana Drain after doing this, and it increases our clock even more by putting a Snapcaster on the battlefield. So I'm going to Snap Stifle the Chromatic Star crack and see if the opponent can use their mana. And once again, they weren't able to profitably use it. So, alright, Essence Flux is pretty nice. Opens up even more options. Alright, so they're knocked down to 8. So, like, we don't have enough to kill them next turn, but it's looking increasingly dire for the opponent. So they found another land, which they immediately crack, and we're just going to, like, just shatter their hopes and dreams right here. We're going to Essence Flux to Tishana's Tidebinder to Stifle their next fetch land. So this is just a total mana denial game, and the opponent's seen enough. On to the next one. This hand's pretty good, but honestly, I don't know why I sent that one back. I think I was fishing for, like, a better turn, like a Spell Pierce or a Stifle. Ended up with an even slower curve. So, yeah, I'm not certain if that was a good mulligan. And we're gonna get hit with Inquisition on top of that. So, not much we can do about it. All right, so they take the Tidebinder and they pass back to us. Stifle could be pretty nice here. Question is, do we just play like a fetch land? Do we play Otawara? Decide to play out the fetch. And you could also bolt into play Sink into Stupor that way, though it is like a nice pitch card for Subtlety, you know, because we could technically scam a Subtlety into play. But as the opponent thought seizes us, please Cephalid, Retainer the like button if you like these sort of tempo decks. Alright. Alright, and they play the Jund Triome. So they took our Quantum Riddler, which could be quite a problem if they have like a Reanimate to bring it back. I'm gonna just grab the Surveil right here. Alright, Tishana's Tidebinder is interesting. They haven't played any fetches yet, though it looks like they probably have some. So go ahead and get rid of that. Just not quite sure what I'm looking for right here. Was maybe hoping to find like a Mana Drain. Going to just play a tap land here and hold up Stifle. Still hoping to like nail like a fetch land, but we could have run out like Thundertrap Trainer last turn. Alright, so the opponent's going to toss out a Croxa. So this is where you do like a graveyard check to see how far they are. So it's clear the opponent's on Jund, you know. So I actually like playing Jund, so I'll go ahead and link a Jund video of my own right here. So the question is what to pitch. Want to keep hitting land drops. Honestly, probably should just discarded Stifle. I don't know why I was so eager to hold on to that. But anyway, they follow up with the Deathrite Shaman, and we end up drawing a replacement Subtlety anyway. So at this point, just going to run out the Thundertrap Trainer and just see if we can find something. So we have Essence Flux, Mana Drain, Brainstorm, and trying to figure out what to get. So like there's a Croxa that we'll have to figure out eventually. Like they don't have enough stuff in the graveyard, but that will be a pretty annoying threat. End up just grabbing the Essence Flux because that allows us to sort of scam a Subtlety in play, should that be, like, important. Alright, so Deathrite's going to activate, you know, gobbling up one of our lands. Now, we could Stifle this, but I don't know. Maybe if we had more pressure, we could have done that. Alright, so it's a Minskimbu, which is pretty dang threatening, really, really strong. So, at this point, I'm going to just scam a Subtlety into play. And the thing is, both Stifle and Essence Flux can do the job. So it really doesn't matter which one, you know, because Stifle can stifle the evoke trigger, and Essence Flux can return it to the battle, you know, blink it, you know. So both those can get the job done. Also, both of them work on Quantum Riddler for like similar reasons, you know. So going to Subtlety it, and considering how strong Minskimbu is, like they're going to just put it on top. Yeah, so it makes sense that they kept it. Now, we drew Tishana's Tidebinder, which is like the most perfect draw, considering the opponent's likely going to just slam Minskimbu again. Because Tidebinder, if it stifles something from a creature or a planeswalker or an artifact, it like takes away all their abilities. So with Minskimbu's like ETB on the stack, we're going to stifle it, and then now it's just like a dead planeswalker. You can't use any of its abilities. So we stifle it, and the opponent's hovering and realizing what just happened, and they are just in big trouble. And yeah, they'd seen enough with that. So on to the next one. That's the power of Tishana's Tidebinder. Really, really strong card. Especially if you can, like, you know, stifle a fetch, you know, strip mine something, and then Tishana's Tidebinder, and like you can just literally just end games that way. So, alright, so opponent has Devourer trigger. Let's see what they do with this. So this is something we could stifle, but it's just selection, you know. So I don't know. And we did get some information. So they have Omniscience and an offer you can't refuse. So it seems like there's some sort of like trying to, you know, turbo out an Omniscience somehow. Alright. And gonna brainstorm. Definitely put it in their Surveil back. That's like something we actively want to fetch up. The question is what else to put back. So, especially considering what we've seen. We've seen Omniscience, we've seen Devour. Like the opponent's on some sort of like combo deck right here. And whatever we put here, we're going to immediately draw. I decide it's worth redrawing the Snapcaster. Definitely want to play a fetch because we don't want to draw that Surveil land currently. Alright, let's see what the opponent does. Right, so they're cracking their fetch, and it's open season right now. We're just going to stifle it. The opponent needs mana to assemble their combo, and they miss a land drop. So once again, this is the power of Stifle. You know, you can really, really, especially in conjunction with Strip Mine, like you can really mess people up. So we're going to see a Spell Pierce on top, which is like perfect card to draw, especially with a Snapcaster in hand. So think about it for a bit just to make sure. But, you know, if they're trying to get like a show and tell on the stack, like we'll be able to really mess with them. So we have Tidebinder. Alright, they're going to consider it. Decide, they've been missing land drops. So I'm looking at what we could possibly Snapcaster back and say, no, I'm just going to Spell Pierce this. Because we know they are choked on mana sources, and that might be like the nail in the coffin. So there is an argument to just running a Snapcaster out there just to try and start like killing them, you know, because that is part of the equation. Alright, there's a Brainstorm, which we could lead with here. But then that possibly makes, if we don't hit a land, then we can't Tidebinder like a fetch land, you know, or a Chrome Mox. So decide just to hold off on the Brainstorm, though it would have been nice. And yeah, the opponent is missing lands, and they've seen enough. So that is definitely a way this deck can win games. Fetch land, we can't stifle. We not only do not have the stifle, but we're going second. So Ragavan. So you could see me thinking about the Subtlety pitch cast, but it's just it would be a desperation move unless we had like a way to like counter it next turn, you know. So that's pretty unfortunate. Ragavan is one of the things that's difficult for this deck to deal with. So I think this deck is like incredibly well equipped to fight combo decks. You know, it's Spell Pierces, Mana Drains, Snapcasters, plus all the Stifle effects. So it's really good against combo. Way less good against the like mid-range decks. So we don't have any like hard removal, you know. So they're crashing with Ragavan. I'm trying to figure out what to do. I decide I'm going to just crack the fetch for a Surveil and just hopefully put something lame on top they can't use. Now, like, they may not be super well equipped to use the cards in our deck anyway, so It's not like a place you love to be, but yeah, I'm just gonna put a land on top since it's not like an actual spell. Like if they hit a Brainstorm with like their fetch land in play, that'd be pretty annoying. So, but they still get the treasure. Now, one thing we could do is just scam a Subtlety into play to try and block down the Ragavan. So that is an option. However, given that they're a red-black deck, like that's an incredibly risky proposition, given that they could have both Bolt and Fatal Push, you know, so it's not an ideal situation. We could also just run a Snapcaster out there to try and trade with the Ragavan. So opponent's going to Brainstorm and step. So it appears to be some sort of like Grixis aggro deck. Don't have a Lurrus Companion though, so that it gives us some information. And I'll go ahead and link a Grixis deck of my own right here. Alright, so the opponent's actually going to just bolt us end step. Just really don't like where this is going. Like, Ragavan's just going to keep giving them treasures and just let them keep pulling ahead. So, this deck struggles with threats on the board. It would be nice if we could get something like Delay into Timeless, you know, like as a way for like Blue to have like a super clean answer for like all sorts of creatures, you know. We do have like rapid hybridization, you know, but then you're left with like a giant 3/3 afterwards, which is not ideal. So this is a desperation move right here. I'm going to attempt the Subtlety scam into play to trade with the Ragavan. I don't know, maybe it was better just to run Snapcaster out there. Alright, so now it's do or die. So trying to think about what the opponent could have going on. So I'm going to attempt to flicker the Subtlety so that it can block the Ragavan. And waiting to see what the opponent does. And they have another Lightning Bolt. I felt a little bit safer doing it, considering they bolted us end of turn, you know? But, you know, these decks are all built with redundancy, you know? So that's super annoying. So Ragavan's going to get through once again. And it's making me really wish I just ran the Snapcaster out there to try and block, you know, because that costs way fewer cards than the whole Subtlety scam, you know. Subtlety is better upside because it can survive the block against Ragavan, but it's incredibly risky, like dumping that many cards into such an attempt like that. So Ragavan hits another land off the top, and they're going to Thoughtseize us. And I was going to just like fetch Spell Pierce just to like gobble up their treasure mana, or honestly, or maybe do nothing. But then I'm like, wait a second, I can Brainstorm and hide some good stuff, and maybe just mostly keep lands. However, there's a big risk doing that against a black deck, because as you may expect, the opponent has Orcish Bowmaster. So this just went downhill really quickly. Now, Orcish Bowmaster is another card that's like exceptionally difficult for this deck. And it makes me wonder if it's not quite correct to stick to mono blue. Like there are benefits, you know, because you can you have cleaner mana, and like you can just, you know, just go all in on spell piercing, stifling, and like it helps your mana, it helps your life total because you're not shocking as much. But if you run into stuff like Bowmasters or Shieldred, you're in pretty huge trouble. So we're gonna eat a bunch of Bowmaster triggers. Oh, I'm forgetting that there's a bounce spell in Bloomburrow that has like you can give him a fish. Anyway, that's something I was considering as like a defensive thing. But it's like, what, you know, using that against the Bowmasters is like not even good. And seeing yet another threat, we're just super dead. So on to the next one. So it could be that this deck wants to be paired with like white, red, or black. White gets you Ephemerates and Solitudes, you know, among other things. Black gets you Bowmasters, Fatal Pushes, stuff like that. Whereas red gets you like Ragavans, you know. So like there's different ways you can do it. But if you're focusing on like enter the battlefields and like scamming and flickering stuff, that might affect the color you choose to pair with it. So we're going to just Surveil right here. Alright, so the opponent is just going to Assassin's Trophy our land. So looks like they're attempting to color screw us right here with that. They might be thinking we're blue-white control. Alright, so mana drain seems super good. And I'm just going to fire off an end step Brainstorm just to keep the cards flowing. Alright, the question is what to put back. So we have a Strip Mine, Sink into Stupor, which doesn't seem super relevant right now, especially because we're not like... Well, I guess we could keep it as a pitch card for Subtlety, but it's just not super important at the moment. So we're sort of Brainstorm flooded, so I'm going to put one of the Brainstorms back. And we'll have to see if we have to mana drain something right here. Alright, opponent puts Isika, God of the Tree on the stack, which is interesting, not something you commonly see in Timeless. So the opponent might be doing some sort of legendary creature shenanigans. So what I'm deciding here is, do we hit them with a scammed Subtlety or just mana drain it? So that's what I'm thinking about right here, is which one's better. And I sort of like the idea of scamming a Subtlety into play because it puts a threat into play and it forces them, to either redraw the Isika and try and recast it, and then we can mana drain it, putting them like miles behind, or it ends up functioning as like a hard counter if they just put it on the bottom of their deck, So that was the rationale. So we're going to scam a Subtlety into play, and using Sink into Stupor as the pitch card, we're going to hit it with our Essence Flux. Now, unlike scamming like a Grief or a Fury or a Solitude, you don't get like extra value from Subtlety re-entering unless they somehow put multiple creatures or planeswalkers on the stack at the same time, which is really unlikely. So a little bit tedious to scam, but anyway, we're doing it, and we're going to see where okay, so they did not want to redraw it, so it turned out that was like a hard counter anyway, and now we can start clocking them. Now it's very tempting to Strip Mine them, considering that we can hold up mana drain still, or we can keep just hitting land drops so that we can eventually get to mana drain, snap, mana drain, So that's why I ultimately decided, like, all right, let's hold off on the Strip Mine here. All right, so opponent tries to drop a Shieldred. And once again, we could mana drain them, but we have an Essence Flux in the graveyard, so I decided just to snap Essence Flux and blink the Subtlety. And this is going we're just trying to tempo the opponent out right here. Like, they can redraw Shieldred and try and replay it, but they're just falling behind and behind. We know we have the mana drain locked and loaded, and then we just drew another Snapcaster, which was awesome. So, going to just play the land and pass. And this might also been like a Strip Mine opportunity, but this is like just pretty juicy. So I'm making sure I don't have any like mana drains already in the graveyard, and I do not yet. So I'm just gonna mana drain that, and the opponent is in big trouble right here. And yeah, they've seen enough. So that's how you can win sometimes, is just by getting slightly ahead and just sort of making the opponent waste their time. All right, so mulliganing and playing a tapped Springs right there. Going to pass through the opponent. Playing that in case of hand disruption, like I don't want one of our few mana sources to get thought seized from us. That was the rationale. Going to just Quantum Riddler. We don't have any interaction at this point, so we're going to just try and redraw into something. And then, so now, like, face of Quantum Riddler. So, Quantum Riddler is good if you can scam it. Also, it's a good place to play to sink extra mana drain mana into, Alright, Glimpse the Unthinkable. Okay, so we're playing against a mill deck. Alright, so now, all of a sudden, they've enabled our Snapcaster Mage, which is excellent. We'd happily just dump 10 random cards in the graveyard to turn on Snapcaster Mage. So, going to just play a land. We have, like, Spell Pierce up. We have Tishana's Tidebinder, so things are looking pretty nice. And check in the graveyard, so we have 2 Brainstorms and a Mana Drain as options for our Snapcaster. So, let's see what the opponent tries to do about it. Alright, Ruin Crab. Not too scary at this point in time, but can get, pretty nasty depending on how things go. Trying to figure out what to do. Because we could, try and... well, actually, there's not really much... We can't snap Mana Drain, so we let it resolve. What I was trying to figure out is, right now, was whether to Tidebinder the Ruin Crab or to Tidebinder the Fetch Land. And because if we Tidebinder the Ruin Crab, then it loses like its abilities. But it seems like denying the mana is stronger in this case. So going to just Tidebinder the Fetch Land. And we don't mind a few cards going to our graveyard anyway, just like a solitary Ruin Crab. Seems like putting them behind a mana is way more powerful. So, and conveniently, Tidebinder can attack through the Ruin Crabs. So, we're going to crash in and pass. We have a ton of options right now. Essence Flux, Spell Pierce, Snappy. So, let's see what the opponent has. Alright, Mockingbird to copy their crab. So, this seems like a really clear subtlety moment. That does two things. It forces them to either, put the Mockingbird on top, which they might be short on lands and they might not want to redraw it, and it increases our clock. They did not want to redraw the Mockingbird, so they're all in on the crab plan, I guess. Like, I haven't really encountered them like trying to like use Mockingbirds to create multiple crabs, so. Alright, gonna just play the Sink into Stupor. I'm trying to decide if we possibly might need 5 mana, and decide to just bolt it in. Mill is not attacking our life total anyway, and by bolting in it we can do Snap, Mana Drain, and have Spell Pierce up. So, trying to figure out what to do. And another Mockingbird means that we can just Essence Flux Subtlety and put the opponent to the same decision once again. It seems like they're not going to want to put him on top because they're like missing land drops right now. So, alright, there's another fetch land. So, they're going to mill us a little bit. And just, always taking inventory of what we have. Alright, so nothing new for Snappy was added to the graveyard. Alright, they're cracking it. And gonna let this happen. Alright, we get another Brainstorm inside there. And going to just hold up Snapcaster. Like, we're clocking them pretty well, but like being able to hold up Snap, Mana Drain, like we might have been able to like Snap Stifle their land. I'm trying to remember if we still had one in there, but it seems like we just need to make sure they don't land any sort of collection of spells that can kill us, so. Alright, so there's Atasha's Hideous Laughter. We can just simply Spell Pierce it, and the opponent is going to need something really good. Now, there was priority passing happening, so they probably have like a Surgical, but yeah, they're super dead. So, on to the next one. Alright, keeping this hand off the strength of having a Spell Pierce. Alright, so the opponent's actually going to Chalice for 0, which is increasingly strong these days, considering Mox Opal and Chrome Mox and Mishra's Bauble, so just throwing out a Chalice for 0 in the dark is not the worst thing to do. Alright, Strip Mine. Our fetch land's keeping us pretty safe, and they're going to Chalice for 1, which actually is reasonably good against us. We have Brainstorms, we have, Essence Fluxes, Spell Pierces, so definitely don't want that to happen. Also forgot to mention we're rocking the Mirage Islands in this one, so going to Spell Pierce them in style. And I actually love playing like Chalice Prison deck, so I'll go ahead and link one of my own right here. And going to just run out a Quantum Riddler here, because we just don't have like any interaction. Hoping to draw like a Mana Drain or just something to get going. We're sort of out of options right now. We will be able to start Snapcastering Spell Pierce next turn, so. Alright, and let's see. And the opponent's actually done. So the thing about these prison decks is like they're really needing to hit 3 mana for like Blood Moons or Fable the Mirror Breaker or Broadside Bombardiers, so if they miss that 3rd land drop, then they could be in like massive trouble. So opponent just didn't feel like dealing with it anymore. This is a sort of strange hand, heavy on the subtleties and mana drains, though we could, shuffle some of them away with the Brainstorm. Alright, so red, blue Surveil. Already wondering if it's like a tempo deck, with Ragavans and Dragon's Age Channelers, or it could be a combo deck. I've been seeing more combo decks of those colors lately. Gonna just Brainstorm an end step, just to use up the mana. Gonna put a couple subtleties back. It seems like we're a little subtlety flood. Like, we will redraw one of them, but gonna just shuffle the other one away. Alright, so gonna play the fetch land, and just hold up Mana Drain, and see where this goes. Would be nice if we had like a Quantum Riddler in hand to like feed the Mana Drain mana into. Alright, so they're going to put a stock up on the stack. So it could still be a tempo deck that had an awkward draw, but it's making me think that they're a combo deck at this point. So going to just Mana Drain the stock up. And the question is, do we spend that mana? Because we have 3 colorless mana. It doesn't seem wise to throw out a Subtlety because it eats up all our blue mana. The one I'm thinking about is Tishana's Tidebinder, which it would be nice to like nuke a fetch land with that, but considering it's like all that free colorless mana and we can still hold up mana drain, it seems smart to throw out Tidebinder to start attacking, you know. Alright, so they're going to Brainstorm, which we could mana drain. But I decided to mana drain it because Brainstorm plus Fetch is incredibly strong in a combo deck. And we'll have this, you know, time will tell if that was a good decision, but it seemed, you know, the opponent didn't have any follow-up after that. So gonna use some more of that colorless mana to warp out a Quantum Riddler. Didn't have quite enough to hardcast it, plus we want to keep up mana drain anyway, because it seems the opponent's trying to assemble something. Would have been really, really nice to draw Essence Flux right there to sort of blink the Quantum Riddler, and we can and still hold up mana drain. That would have been really strong. So, all right, so the opponent's going to crack their fetch, and from the opponent's point of view, they can't be super happy facing a blue deck with known counterspells and stifles, and us just hanging, you know, holding up open mana over them. So, going to grab the Surveil right here. And Island seems like we want more action. Like a Snapcaster would be super strong right now. Alright, another mana drain doesn't hurt. Yeah, so just going to crash in with Tidebinder. And we can play a tapped Sink into Stupor because we're either going to like Subtlety something or like double mana drain or single mana drain, you know, so don't need the odd number of mana. So opponent's passing, like this could be feeding a mana drain right here, like turn it into a huge ritual, but I really want to increase the clock, and it also seems like Subtlety is not going to be getting anything, so we've really interfered with their card selection, so they might be just drawing like sort of the awkward cards in their deck, hopefully. So we're going to crash in for 6 damage and sitting real pretty right now. Not going to risk a Quantum Riddler when we're this far ahead, like we can hold up so many mana drains to make sure nothing gets through. So Impulse. So I really wasn't sure here if I should counter this, if I should wait. And yeah, the opponent's seen enough at that point. Like it was pretty dang safe with the backup mana drain, but there was an argument to just letting that through and holding up 2 mana drains for something else. So, but the opponent was miles behind at that point. All right, so here's a Ragavan. One of the most difficult cards for this deck to deal with, unless we have like an early Thundertrap Trainer. Like turn 1 Ragavan is like really, really annoying. Now also, I'm not certain the strength of that keep, considering how many double blue cards we had and how many colorless lands, you know. So that it was like a risky keep, but I kept it off the strength of being able to scam like a Quantum Riddler into play potentially, or a Subtlety, you know. So here's the question: do we try and scam a Subtlety into play to block Ragavan? It costs an incredible amount of cards, and they could just bolt it down, you know. So I decide to crack a fetch, and they are getting priority passes. So I decide just to let it happen and just stifle the Ragavan trigger. And as we do that, let me know in the comments, like, what color do you think pairs best with blue in this sort of tempo thing? Like, do you like blue-red, blue-black, blue-green, blue-white, you know? What do you prefer? Or mono-blue? Now this is very unfortunate. So we are a monocolor deck, we don't care about Blood Moon that much, but we happen to draw like a pretty non-basic heavy hand. And like we are like, you know, we have a low actual island count because we're fetching him up. So I'm keeping up, like feeling pretty desperate now, and I don't want Ragavan to start running away with it. So I'm holding up the scam Subtlety play right there. Like there is an argument to just Quantum Riddlering right there to try and draw an island. So this is me, this is a desperation move, and this is like, it's something you can do, but so often you shouldn't do it because, yeah, I don't know, it's tough because we want to try and get the dang Ragavan off the board, but this is like incredibly costly if this goes poorly. So going to attempt the scam right here. And the opponent's getting some priority passes, but I figured against a prison deck, like they're going to have less like removal, like it may get got by Fury afterwards is sort of what I was thinking. So, and we're waiting to see what happens. All right, so all that clears, and we're getting the opportunity to block. So I'm like, all right, maybe this is actually working. So attempt to block, and the opponent did have the lightning bolt. So that's a misplay on their part because they should not have let us block, because then Ragavan could have got in, made a treasure, possibly drew a card off us, you know. So But it's not going to matter that much because they're pretty dang far ahead. Alright, so they're going to Chrome Mox something right now. And it is Broadside Bombardiers under the Chrome Mox into a Fable. So I'll go ahead and link a red prison deck of my own right here. It's an archetype I absolutely enjoy playing. So we're not completely dead yet, but it's looking really bad. Now we can, you know, flash in Snapcaster, sort of like an Ambush Viper to trade with Dragavan. Because at this point, the opponent's like out of cards. I don't want them to like draw useful stuff off our deck. So Goblin Shaman's going to trigger. And just going to flash the Snapcaster into play. Would have loved to have like another island. So going to just block down the Ragavan. So that at the very least worked. And let's see if the opponent has a follow-up. Because they did have the option to filter with Fable in this turn, so they kept something but didn't use it. Mana Drain, so often a card we love to see, is tough right here with only a solo blue mana. So we're going to just Quantum Riddler. Spell Pierce is doing nothing. Like, we do have Pitchcast Subtlety up, which is not that amazing. Works better, like, you know, pitch casting Subtlety when you have Ragavans and Dragon's Rage Channelers, and or like Ocelot Prides, you know, works a lot better. So Pyrogoyf is tough. We just can't really deal with that if that gets into play. So this is like full on desperation mode. Going to pitch cast Subtlety and hope to just rip an island. I'm assuming that they're going to put Pyrogoyf on top of their deck right here. Because if we get an island, then we can mana drain it, feed that mana into Quantum Riddler, and like we might be getting somewhere. So that's sort of the plan. Snapcaster is not ideal, but the opponent actually did not keep their Pyrogoyf, which I guess didn't have a very loaded graveyard, you know, so. And Broadside Bombardiers is basically lights out for us because they have like infinite artifacts to toss at us, and they can copy it with Reflections of Kiki Jiki, so we're going to just move on with our lives and on to the next game. So this hand didn't have any of like the 1-mana spells like to have it in the opener. Going to definitely get rid of Essence Flux here. We don't even have any creatures to blink with it, so going to hope to use Brainstorm to sculpt our hand and Stifle to like help battle them. So, alright, so the opponent shocks in a blue-white land, which should have been a pretty big clue right there, that they're holding up some 1-mana spell, you know, like Swords or Spell Pierce or something like that. And they're bolting in the other land, so I decide, you can see me a little bit hesitant, like, gosh, are they going to stifle me right here? I decide just to crack the fetch anyway, like, you know, what are we going to do? And we do, in fact, get stifled, so that really sucks. So we're getting got by our own game plan right now. So at this point, I'm like, okay, well, we're like pretty dang far behind, so I'm just gonna strip mine their land and hopefully like slow them down. But it is just not our game right now. They are going to stifle the strip mine. So the opponent is now 2 mana ahead of us and plays another fetch land. So we're facing a sort of pseudo mirror right here, but then they follow up with Wary Zone Guard, which is really unfortunate. And it's an exceptionally strong card. They're going to get the fetch land back, it's going to keep growing, and we're just like, we're basically already dead right now. That just went about as poorly as it could go with them doing all the stifling instead of us. So this is like a moral victory right here. I'm going to stifle the fetch land on there instead and be like, hey, that's what we were trying to do. But the thing about Wary Zone Guard, like, it's just going to keep crashing and just keep rebuying the fetch, you know. So it's, and it just keeps growing. It's just like a ridiculous card. Like, these alchemy cards are, I don't particularly like them. They're I call them inelegant at best for the most part, you know. So, all right, they're gonna crack their fetch. We could try and go for another moral victory, like stifling it, but honestly, mana draining and like drawing like mana draining something big and drawing a Quantum Riddler is like the only way we can maybe come back. But yeah, now they have Strip Mine to start looping with Wary Zone Guard. We are super dead. So I attempt to stifle the Strip Mine. And yeah, the opponent has a response to that, so we're just moving on to the next game. So this hand is pretty nice. Alright, so the opponent has the Surveil, and they surveil away a Chrome Mox. So that's like a ton of information right there, because we have the strip mine or not strip mine option on turn 1. Now, seeing them surveil away a Chromox tells me that they have like a ton of mana sources, so that it doesn't make sense, possibly even already a Chromox in hand. So it doesn't make sense to strip mine them when they have like a surplus of mana. So, alright, they're going to strike it rich. And strike it rich again. I'm like, oh no, is this going to be like Dark Ritual into Buried Alive? Like, is this just the nuts Phoenix draw? But they hit the brakes right there, so we're still in this. They're going to Brainstorm. It was looking real ugly, but it's making me think that they're like a combo deck. Like, typically Phoenix is the one that plays those like strike it rich kind of cards and things like that. So I'm going to definitely put the Surveil back and put Thundertrap Trainer. So this would be one of those games where we're like playing defense and like really hoping to draw into a mana drain, or like even a Spell Pierce right now, though they're really turboing out the mana. So threatening a mana drain right here, even though we don't really have anything good going. Alright, Talisman of Indulgence. So they could also be some sort of like turbo ramp deck. So anyway, it's still trying to figure out what they have going on. Gonna get the Surveil right here, trying to find some action. Another land is not exactly what we want. We have a few lands, we want like some counters. We will be able to start having Tishana's Tidebinder up. Alright, so there's a Quantum Riddler. Which, they have so many cards in hand that I'm a little worried, and I want to, like, let's say they slam like a... Yeah, I don't know what they could be slamming, so it feels safer with Tishana's Tidebinder up, we'll put it that way. Though we are, like, just sort of letting a ton of mana go to waste, so... But the opponent's not doing anything, they're not putting us in any pressure, so... Now at the very least, if they don't do anything, we can just toss out a Subtlety. Alright, so the opponent, is he like majorly flooded or something? I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm going to crack the Flooded Strand and just end step flash in a Subtlety. So that's going to start putting a clock on them, and it does not look like a card that's going to be useful in this matchup. It is sort of scary getting rid of like our one like free spell. Alright, another Quantum Riddler, super annoying, because if we cast it and miss a land, then we can't Tidebinder something, even if we warp the Quantum Riddler. So you could see me like thinking like, oh, do we? Anyway, I was about to Thundertrap Trainer in, but that's it. Well, that's pretty fun. It's always interesting to like try out this playstyle that's very like reactive and adaptive. So like really trying to see what the opponent's doing and adjust accordingly. So if they're playing a bunch of creatures out, we might rush some creatures. If it's a combo deck, we're going to sit back on our Stifles and our counters. Might be able to just like attack their mana base enough that we can just sort of beat them down with like some 2 or 3 power creatures, so there's some cool things. You can definitely see this deck has some vulnerabilities. Like, it's good against combo decks, less good against sort of mid-range or aggro decks, and so you might be able to mitigate that by dipping into other colors like I've talked about. But if you want to adhere to mono blue, here's some other stuff I was thinking about when building it. So into the Flood Maw, I almost squeezed a couple copies of this in there just to have a way to deal with permanents or creatures, though it is like a temporary measure, so would be nice if we had other options. Possibly rapid hybridization. Like, I don't really think this is quite where you want to go, because the 3/3 creature is still quite nasty, though maybe you do have to use this to battle like Bowmasters and stuff like that. And then if you want to go with sort of like the ETB scamming value thing, you want flash things so you can hold up all your counterspells. So you want ETB creatures that can be flashed into play, ideally, so one that sort of helps deal with creature threats is Floodpit's Drowner. So that's like something you can do. Another one I was thinking about is Merfolk Trickster, which I almost threw a couple copies in there. The flex spot is sort of like Thundertrap Trainer, but the nice thing with this strategy is like it's infinitely customizable. Like if you want to lean a little bit more controlling, you can go that way. You can add other colors. You can really sculpt it how you want. I think there's a lot of play. Like you can rock some Tamios in there. Like there's a lot you can do. You can even maybe go Harbinger. Like there's a lot of directions, but you gotta be careful. If you add a lot of sorcery speed creatures, that'll just interfere with like your hold up counter spells, So, but yeah, there's a lot of options, and that's the deck. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you want to see even more nonsense, please consider subscribing. And if you're already subscribed, thank you for your support. Your engagement with the channel helps me know what the people want. Thank you.